Welcome back to the Morning Cuppa Podcast with me, Alan. Today, I'm joined by Frank Morris from FNM Transport Limited. Frank is an experienced transport manager and compliance consultant with shed loads of experience. In this episode, we focus on supporting each other's mental health, how to spot a bullshitter when taking on new transport management clients, and some great advice for how to be an external transport manager. Speaking of being an external transport manager, are you a TM looking to take your career to the next level? Then you definitely need to check out the Transport Managers Collective, the #1 digital community specifically aimed at transport managers wanting to improve safety and compliance of their fleet. So yeah, go ahead and check out the TMC. The link will be below somewhere, I'm sure. Right now, or do it maybe after the show. Listen to the show first. Anyway, I really enjoyed recording this one, so do strap in and let's get to it. So, yeah, we'll just start and
do what you like.
We probably won't, to be honest. I quite like these random starts. I hit record, so I better say hello. Hey guys, Hey, I've got Frank Morris from FNM Transport with me today, who's a very experienced transport manager. I would quite appreciate diving straight in, to be honest.
Hello.
I mean, as our listeners will start realizing, I've kind of started speaking to some guests rather than just talking to myself, which is what it was last year. And I was really glad when you actually you replied to my LinkedIn message going, "Would you be on?" Because I kind of seen your journey from afar for a while, and I think you'd have so much stuff that our listeners are going to get out of what you're going to say today. So if we just dive straight in to kind of set the scene. So first of all, over to you, really, like your history, your work history. What's got to where you are today?
Good grief! Bit of a long story. Grab a cup of tea and have a little light.
Well, grab a morning cuppa, grab a brew, and sit down, and let's dive in.
Lovely link, that Alan. I like that. Yeah, I suppose.
There you go. It's almost like I've done this before. Sorry, carry on.
Do you know? Spooky. Yeah, I joined the army at a tender age of 17 and a half. I went into the Royal Corps of Transport. So I suppose that's where I got the HGV bug. And then I moved into, I was a HGV driving instructor by the age of 19, I think. So everything was all linked to wagons and diesel fumes and breaking things and fixing things. Yep. So it just sort of kind of gets under your skin to a certain extent. And then I made the fatal mistake of getting married quite early, predominantly to get away from the inside from the billets, so you could get into the married quarters, which made life a bit easier. Obviously, 35 years further on, I was bitterly disappointed with the decision back then. But you know, a couple of kids later and a couple of grandkids later, not much you can do about that. We digress anyway. So I departed from the army. I went into express parcels, done about 13 years. Came out, started as a driver, and then worked my way up into depot management positions. And I sort of stayed doing them sort of levels. I done my transport national CPC transport management in '99 initially. So I was on to operators licenses from then. And then I've done a variety of in between express parcels or waste management predominantly. Spent a lot of time just running trucks and depots, from small depots with just 5 or 10 people in, up to single sites of up to 150 people. Some regional and national roles as well. So a good mixed bag really. I did jump back into a wagon. I don't know, hung up my management keys and jumped back into a wagon for a couple of years to help just before COVID. So it turned out to be a good move. It wasn't planned. I didn't know COVID was coming, but yeah, I jumped in.
Did you start COVID?
Well, I couldn't possibly confirm or deny. But yeah, so it was 2 years. Jumped back into a class 1, doing something for 2 years. Thoroughly enjoyed it to a certain extent. It gave me head a rest. But yeah, it was nice. I was still doing a little bit of external transport manager stuff, but only a smidgen because obviously you're restricted with the time. And it was back into middle of last year. I decided to come back and just set up my limited company again and just work for myself. So yeah, it's now just a combination of transport compliance and external transport management stuff. So yeah, just in case you can hear that snarling or snorting, I don't know whether you can, but it's the lad's dog that's on the floor here. So it's definitely
is it the dog? That's fine. You did warn. If it gets any louder, we might do a pause and you can kick him out for half an hour. But it seems okay at the moment. So we interrupt this program for a special report. Not really. It's just me again. So you've done your CPC exam. Now let's prepare for the real world of transport with a TM bootcamp on the 12th to the 16th of June 2023. Get 5 days of expertly delivered training and learn what really works with operators in the real world. Learn from experienced professionals in the field and network with other transport management professionals. You'll also get to develop your leadership and communication skills that work actually in the real world. Plus, get 3 months unlimited access to the TMC, as you know, the #1 digital community for TMs. So get ready for the world of transport management and sign up to the TM Bootcamp for just £500. Places are limited, so do get on it quickly. Use the link in the description to grab your place now. Anyway, that's enough for me. Now back to, me. You glazed over that. Yeah, I'll say you glazed over kind of your police experience. Obviously, you're a police officer for a while as well.
I kind of leave that out to a certain extent because I've done it for about 4.5 years. But the problem is when you put that into conversations and you say, "Oh yeah, I was a bobby for a few years." People they always think, oh, well, once a bobby, always a bobby. So they don't tell you anything. So you've got to be careful who you talk, because otherwise, then they'll just shut the gob and not give you the full story. So I tend to leave that out.
And actually, I mean, although it is on your LinkedIn, so people can find it out. But yeah, I think it's almost easier to explain that than a career break of 4.5 years, I guess. So
yeah, no, I mean that came about. I took voluntary redundancy after with 13 years with one company, and one of the guys had gone into Cheshire Police. So I thought, well, the army side of things. While I was doing the express parcels, I was on 9 years in the TA as well. So I hadn't had that much of a break, from some sort of background like that. But yeah, I thought, well, I'll jump in and give it a go. So and it was good. It was good variety. Probably should have joined about 10, 15 years earlier because I joined at 35. But I always had an old headpiece. So my thought process of joining was, to have a cup of tea with Mrs. Miggins and sort of kind of sort out. But it wasn't quite like that. Back in the day, it was. So yeah. But it was. I'd done quite a bit. Within me 4.5 years, I did enjoy a lot. But an opportunity came up that was potentially triple the wage of what I was earning. So yeah, and I was feeling a bit frustrated in which direction I was going to go in. So yeah, I took the plunge and jumped back into a senior management position. So
did you not think did you not look at like the transport police as kind of with your wealth of experience at that point? Was it not worth looking at that, or were you really looking for a career change?
I don't know. Is the honest answer, really. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I've never, not once have I ever made a decision from a professional decision and thought, well, I should have done this or I should have done that. I don't believe in regrets. Once you make a decision, then you've got to stand by it, and rightly or wrongly, then you've got to give it a go. So yeah. I still don't know whether it was right or wrong. And to be honest with you, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So,
I love that mindset because I 100% kind of believe with that. I think without getting too kind of philosophical, I think personally, I set kind of certain like personal morals and goals that I live by. If I can live those through my professional life, then I've achieved it. Like it's not what you do, it's what you achieve as your role. That's how I see it. Like at the moment, I'm working within software and transport, but I ultimately am trying to make other people's lives slightly easier and slightly better. And if I can do that in whatever role, I could do that in a plethora of roles. As long as I can achieve those kind of core values, then that's all that really matters to me. So I think it's what I want to do when I grow up. Yeah, I kind of agree with that sentiment.
No, well, I must admit, it's been nice during the journey. I mean, because I've worked in quite a few different places and met so many different people.
Yeah.
It's been nice to sort of develop certain individuals, and then you've mentioned LinkedIn before. That's, it's a really good tool to see these individuals and see how they're growing and what directions are going in, and and you don't feel like they're your babies, but it is nice to have made a positive difference to a lot of people.
Let's dive into that a little bit. So what do you mean by that? Do you kind of, have you worked with other people that you kind of supported along the way on your journey? And
individuals that have been, say, drivers, and they've wanted to get on, they wanted to move on. So you bring them in, and if there's an opportunity, you bring them and train them into a supervisor role. And then they move into some sort of shift manager role or depot manager role. And you're just helping and supporting. And I still get phone calls from people 20 years ago. That have cropped up and said, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And I should charge them now. Now I'm running the company again. But yeah, and you're always there. You always feel. I mean, there was a guy back in quite early days. He was what was his title? I think it was area customer service manager. I mean, they always change titles, and it means completely different. Basically, a regional manager.
Yeah.
And he was probably the biggest influence of my whole career. And this would have been early 90s. But the way his ethos was, the way he was able to talk to people, remember the names, remember the wives' names or the kids' names. I could never do that. How on earth? He had a phenomenal memory. But he would always take the time to talk to you or to assist, and he'd almost float around, to speaking to the other drivers and the such. And he just had a fantastic way. And I remember thinking, I was probably early to mid 20s. I thought, if I could be half as good a manager as he is, I'd be delighted with that. So yeah. I remember him.
Are you still in touch with him now, or is he long past?
Christmas cards. Okay. He doesn't live local, but still. With the odd little note that he pops in.
Very good, very nice. It's
lovely.
I think going back to how you kind of interact with people, it's something that I would. Although I do this job, like I run a team, we've got 7-8 of us in the team, and I do this podcast, and I speak to a lot of people. I'm still, in my eyes, not a particularly good conversationalist. I love the idea of getting to know people and knowing their kids' names and knowing their wives' names, because I'm really good with that with my small team. Like our team, we know each other very well. We go out all the time. I know boyfriends, girlfriends, kids. We got birthdays. Like, I don't forget that sort of stuff, but I find that you get those people that you like at family events or like at weddings and stuff, and the ones that just are able to kind of know everything about you and be able to walk over and have this like effortless conversation. It's such a skill. It's such a skill that I wish I had. The problem I have is I don't really like people. That is my problem. Like I like people. I don't like the public. I love talking to, and I really loved. It's one of the reasons why my team let me do the podcast. Is it gets it out. It lets me talk to kind of loads of people about loads of kind of cool subjects. But it's like what we were saying off air about being parents and how I just really don't like other people's kids and other people's parents. I find it kind of irritating. You've got to have this. I wish every conversation you could have wasn't superficial. I'd rather have like deep, meaningful conversations the whole time. It's quite intense. I think that's quite hard. But yeah, being a good conversationist, I think, is a very useful skill, especially when managing a big team of, say, drivers as well.
Yeah. No, it certainly is. The only problem is sometimes, as you get a little bit longer in the tooth, shall we say, you recognise are we allowed to swear on here, or is that?
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. No, that's fine. That's what you want.
You spot a bullshitter at 1,000 paces.
Yeah.
So I just haven't got the patience to listen. People coming in and they come up with all sorts of horseshit, and it drives me insane. So but yeah,
and I think I think as you get older and more experienced in the ways of the world, you call it out more. I just go, I'm not going to entertain this crap. Like, just don't. Like, I think I found as I've got older, your friendship group gets smaller because you don't give a shit as much. You'd much rather spend your mental bandwidth on things that make a difference and you care about. And if people are going to bullshit, it's just like, nah, I've not got the patience. Life is far too short to put up with this.
I'm really. I mean, my lad is quite similar to me. He's just not bothered. He's not bothered about saying something that potentially might upset somebody else. I mean, I'm not a big fan of saying something to upset individuals. But sometimes things need to be said. But the daughter is just far too sensitive, and I find that a bit frustrating as well. You need to sort of kind of not grow up here, but just relax a little bit and don't take life too seriously, because people make themselves ill worrying about life, the universe, and everything, and you just.
It's easy to say. It's difficult because I mean I've as I said off air, like I'm quite open. I have a therapist because I overanalyze an awful lot, trying to balance running a startup, having a young child, trying to be a husband as well. Like, it's all important parts. I also enjoy my fitness and my running. But I wouldn't have it any other way. They're all parts of me. But something I've learned on the way is mental health is something that's really important to get right. In terms of supporting people, like, everyone has a mental health. Like, it's like a physical health. You have it. It's just how balanced it is. And I personally don't suffer from anxiety. We all get anxious about things, but I know people that do have anxiety. I've got people in my team, for example, suffer from anxiety, family members, and it's really hard to understand because, like, I don't have. It's difficult. Sometimes you want to just like throttle them, just not. But that's just not helpful because
give them a good shake and say, "Listen, stop it. Just stop worrying."
But it doesn't work like that. It's
no,
like,
of course.
If someone had cancer, you wouldn't just shake them, just get better. It's like, well, it's not quite like that. Like, it's an imbalance. It's a problem internally to deal with. So
it's one of them that you can't see.
No,
you can't see. And this is why sometimes, again, we're using examples with drivers and especially wagon drivers, they're out there driving lethal weapons. Yeah. So you need to make sure that that you know your team, you know your guys, and if these suddenly start behaving differently or going quiet or loud, either way, just out of character, it's important to talk to them and try and get. I mean, obviously they don't have to tell you anything, but you get to know your people, or you'll know that they've got other buddies perhaps, and say, well, listen, I'm not 100% convinced that he's not telling me anything, or she's not telling me anything, but yeah, go and have a chat with them. Make sure.
I think it's really important to create a culture of open communication.
I agree. Yeah.
I think people won't necessarily come to you if they don't feel they're going to get kind of respected with the answer, with what you say. So, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I kind of bang on about mental health quite a lot on the podcast, because I think it's really important, and we live in a massively male-dominated environment, industry, and men don't talk. I mean, it is changing.
Yeah,
we are changing. We are talking about our feelings, but
it was never done years ago.
No, and even now we're still struggling. We're still pushing an uphill battle against kind of people talking about their feelings. But like, I think it's 18 suicides a day. Not all men, but 18 suicides is just heartbreaking. And I know that's kind of extreme mental health kind of crises, but it
is, but it's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that just talking about it on a podcast aimed predominantly at men in the transport sector is important, that people listening understand that it is okay to talk.
Of course it is. Yeah.
You should feel like you can open up to people you work
with.
The
other aspect, and again, depending on the environments, because some of the transport environments are, banter is a little bit raw. Yeah. And quite uncouth, shall we say? But in those circumstances, if people then do start want to talk, it's not always good to do that. And that if you've got somebody that you can trust, then great. But go and speak to go and speak to somebody in a supervisory position or a management position, or somebody that you can go and. I mean, obviously, depending on the size, there's HR to discuss it with, but
I think as a
speak to somebody
as a light, because I mean it's you're an ETM, like that's your day job now. You're on site with lots of customers, but you might only be site once a week, twice a week, so you don't have the same relationship with the drivers that maybe you would if you were there full time. And also, I'm guessing a lot of the time you're seen as an external contractor, not as a part of the team.
And that's something. It's a little bit different. You've got to get used to that.
I think that
not line managing them per se. Yeah.
So but then also that might actually work out in your favour or in their favour. They might feel more. It can. Yeah, I know that when I've spoken about it on the show before. Like when I had, it wasn't a breakdown, but I definitely. My wife most nights was like, you do need to go and speak to someone. You're struggling with your emotions. My little one was going through her terrible twos. It wasn't easy. It's not her fault. She was 2. I'm the adult. I should know better, but I didn't. And I'd get unnaturally angry at all situations. But I found it easier to talk. Like, she was like, you just need to talk to someone. I was like, but that's fine. I'm fine. I did the typical man thing. I was okay. And then one morning I was just like, no, I can't do this anymore. I was sitting by the front door, just crying and just what was wrong with me. And I then Googled it, as most people do. I found,
self-diagnosis these days.
Yeah. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with me, but yeah. So I decided I found a therapist and had a free consultation. This was coming up for 2 years now. So it was during COVID, during lockdowns. I weren't doing face-to-face sessions. It was all on Zoom and stuff. And I found it so easy to open up to someone that I'd never spoken to before. I had no relation. Like, friends and family are great. However sympathetic they might be, they still have a bias, and they still. I don't know if you might be the same as me, but you want to fix the problem. When someone comes to you with a problem, you want to fix it.
Of course you do, yeah.
But actually, sometimes it's not about fixing. It's about listening non-judgmentally. And I think everyone, if you speak to someone who sometimes you feel like you're going to be judged. And so it was really nice talking to someone that didn't know me from anyone, and I just didn't judge me. And I'd say it went well enough that I've been going back every week for 2 years now, and I find it's the best hour of my week speaking to her. Like, even now, like I'd like to think I'm completely fine and together all the time, but like it only I'm so much better at being who I am now because I've had that. But I'm quite lucky that I can afford to pay for a therapist because it's not NHS. So yeah, I think that's the original point, which was speaking to people is sometimes easier when it's someone you don't know. So I think there are.
Yeah, it is. It is, yeah, without a doubt. But it just shows you, from using yourself as an example, how such a small thing, and and other people that are listening to that have experienced really extreme grief, or the people some people suffer from PTSD. I know it's slightly different, but it can create lots of other additional things on top. But it doesn't have to be a massive life-changing event to affect your mental well-being.
Yeah,
it can be something as simple as a 2-year-old driving you nuts.
Yeah,
and it is as simple as that.
I think that's the thing, is sometimes it's harder. So I mean, my team, we're quite open about stuff. Like, we're all mental, which doesn't help my language, but like we all have varying degrees of mental health conditions. We all do, up and down, bits and bobs. Some people are in therapy, some are not. Some have been through some, and some people have like actual reasons. This is a video one, so I can actually do inverted commas fingers. I can air quotes, like have reasons, like they've lost loved ones, or they've kind of witnessed things like that. That's things that traditionally, like, oh yeah, well you're allowed to have a problem if you've seen that. But then we've got others that are like, well, I've had quite a nice middle class white upbringing. There's nothing really wrong with my life. Why have I got these problems? And it's actually harder, especially if you overanalyze and overthink everything, for you to kind of think, well, but there's nothing wrong with me. There should be nothing wrong with me. Like if you've lost someone, it's like, well, there's a reason. I can attach a reason. I can get through that. I can work on that. But it's when you think you haven't got a reason, I think it's almost harder to open up about it. It's like, well, there's nothing wrong with me. My life's perfect. It's like, well, clearly not. It's
you're right. Well, I lost my parents really young. I was 8 when my dad died and 15 when my mum died.
Yeah.
So I could have, I mean, it was quite a while ago now, but I could have gone, my head could have fallen off. I could have gone in a completely different direction. But for me, I just matured incredibly quickly. But I became really strong. So I pretty much I could deal with any, and people. This is probably why I've dealt with lots of pressure and everything else, and a lot easier than some. Because you can always think back and say, well, actually, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
And so and it depends. We're all different. We're all different, and I guess as we said before, then life would be incredibly boring if we were all the same.
Yeah. But then also, other parents are really irritating, I think was what the thing.
That's not going to change that. That's not going
to change.
No,
I know. I say my little one, she's off to school this year, and I don't look forward to the playground conversations. I just don't care. I just don't care. But anyway, we digress. This was not actually where I thought this episode would go. Wow, we really opened up.
Things just go in a different direction.
It does.
Not a jot.
Say again?
Matters not a jot.
It does not at all. So I guess I have actually kind of written a few pointers and questions to ask, because I say you've got like such experience that I was quite like, I mean, you've only been doing it technically for the last year, but you've been doing transport management stuff for decades.
I've been managing people and operations and vehicles since the land that I forgot. I think.
Yeah. Well, we're not gonna. We won't do a chronology. We won't put dates to these things. Although I'm guessing people could find you on LinkedIn quite easily. They could look at your history that way. I guess is there anything? I mean, we're speaking about mental health a little bit, but I was thinking more kind of professionally. Is there anything that you're? I don't want to throw any of your clients or customers under the bus, but is there anything that you're finding really difficult at the moment in what you in kind of with your customers right now? Anything that's kind of really getting you down, or something you're struggling with, and how are you kind of trying to solve it, I guess?
To be honest with you, the only thing that I struggle with, because I've been doing this sort of stuff for years, and all your internal systems, when you take on a new client, depending on the size of them, you sometimes you can sit there and think, where am I going to start? If it's a new startup, it's easier because you're setting everything up from scratch. But when you're moving into something that is that's been running, but it's either been running badly or there's lots of tweaks, and you think, good grief, there is that many things to fix here. So you just got to prioritise, and there has been one or two within the last 12 months that you've got that thought process, thinking, of all the years that I've done this, you're thinking, good grief, I've got to fix that, I have to do that, I have to tweak that, and you've got to have a word with yourself and say, right, well, let's get it down on paper and make a plan of attack.
Is that how? Do you have any kind of tips and techniques you use when you get hit by that? Because I mean, you got experience. We've got people who listen to this that are sort of brand new, kind of only been doing it a year or so. How are they meant to know what to do? It'd be like, is there anything you sort of like advise them in terms of?
Use a checklist. Get a check. You can lift them off the internet for RHA audits or and such, and there's lots of different bullet points, and break it down into the driver side of things, into tachograph, into maintenance, and just sort of prioritise with regard to in each of them sections. So at least if it's that bad, then just think of your good repute, and you'll have a bit of a lead in time. They wouldn't expect you to be able to turn the world upside down in the space of a couple of days. But yeah, just make a plan. I create action plans, and anyone that's part of it will be named on there, and we'll create the actions and put a name against who's going to look after it and make sure everyone gets a copy. So at least if somebody came in, DVSA came in or whoever came in to look at the operation, they could, if they wanted to come in and do an audit, they'd look at the audit or their audit, see all these gaps. But at least you've got an action plan. You've got something as a hit list to say, yeah, we're aware of that. And this is what we're doing about it.
Do you put like dates and like priority levels on the actions?
Sometimes it depends on the customer really, and sometimes they'll have a different plan. They'll want other stuff and they concentrate on. I mean, it's been really tough. The industry has been incredibly tough for the last the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So they've got to keep the money,
the lights on.
in.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's it's all over for them.
We talk about like I've had some real kind of great compliance and safety experts on in the last few days recording episodes, and and I talk about like safety and compliance is good for business because it does save you money in the long run. If you're a compliant business, your insurance premiums go down. You're not paying to repair your vehicles aren't off the road. You haven't got kind of driver's claims coming against you for HR issues and kind of accident at the workplace. Like, it's all great, but actually, if you have a small operation, you can operate by the seat of your pants and probably get away with it. And it's those operators that's really hard to convince that it's really important to have things in place, because but it's never happened to me before. It's like, yeah, but if it does, it'd be really expensive. And also, you're breaking the law as well. But
yeah. I have to say, I've come across a number of them in me time, really, that have just literally been money focused
but short term money focused. I think
it is. Yeah, that's right. Well, basically, they've not been caught.
Yeah,
they haven't. They've just been, as you said, flying by the seat of your pants. But they've just never been caught. So they're thinking that everything's all fine. But it only takes, and it might not even be their fault.
Yeah.
It could be, I mean, God forbid, again, we were talking about anxiety and suicide and such, but it could literally be somebody walking out. They want to, that's a great way to finish things off, to jump in front of an HGV. It normally does the job. But it's not just that occurrence then. The vehicle would be seized.
Yeah,
9 times out of 10, it would be seized and then looked into, and then you'd have to provide all the compliance information and everything to do with that vehicle. Could follow up with a visit as well to check your internal controls.
Yeah,
and if you haven't got any, then straight away from something that is absolutely nothing, couldn't have been avoided.
Yeah,
but it can come all the way back to you, and then you end up in court or prison or huge fines, which you can't afford. So you're still out of business.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, but until that happens, it's very easy to kind of go, it's fine, we'll get away with it till we don't get away with it, sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's very narrow-minded, but I think the more people are talking about the issues and from a compliance point of view, because I quite enjoy the difference between just external transport manager is one thing, but just doing the compliance side of things. So you can go in, you haven't got your name on a no license, but you're just going in with a genuine, and you're providing them with a list, and you can always tell that the people are genuinely interested and think, well, that's great, that's smashing, thanks very much. We just didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know where to start. And there's others that look at it as just an inconvenience. Yeah. Like, well, that's just flannel. You don't have to do that. So, again, that's up to you. But if my name was on the O license, then this is your list of jobs that you'd be doing. Otherwise, I'd be taking my name off your O license because it's my good repute that you're risking. Yeah. And ultimately, it's not just risking your good repute on that. If you were on 1, 2, 3, 4 O licenses, you can go a maximum 4. Yeah. Then you're stuffed on all of them. So.
I never really thought like one operator could actually have a direct impact on your other 3.
Of course it could,
I never really thought of it affecting that way around, So, I mean, that kind of leads me on quite nicely to kind of like another question I had was, how do you get new customers, new operators on board to your way of thinking? Obviously, you kind of do your checklist when you walk into a customer the first time, go, there's the action plan we need to do. How do you actually shift their culture towards giving a shit about compliance?
It's in a structured way. Again, everyone's different. So, you have certain individuals that they don't know what direction to go in. And you've come in, you've given them a list, and that's what they've been waiting for. And they want to work with you, and they want to do everything that's on the list, and you're working your way down. There's others that they're hard work. It's fair to say they're hard work because they don't want to. It's not all. Not everything costs money.
Yeah.
To get all the compliance in. They'd have to pay you as an individual to either get it done or come up with a list to get them to do it. But I struggle with that concept. That's literally I'm providing you a way to protect your business. Sometimes they will come around, but it's when the vehicles, the maintenance schedules are all over the place, and you come and see, you just can't do that. So you've got to lift the information, stick the operator's license under the nose, and say, listen, this is what you've signed up for, whether it be a 6-week or an 8-week. This is the garage that you signed up for. These are even down to the directors that's on the license. So it's got to compare with with what's on the company's house. All these different things, and they were either naive, they didn't know, or they're just not bothered. They're just winging it and seeing what happens. But you've got to get the foundations right, and if they understand that, there's one or two that have come through, and the jobs have just been very, very hit and miss during the previous 12 months or however long it is. So then to put it through its next MOT, it's cost them $6,000 or something or other, and they've just become they've expected it. They've said, it's only cost us $5,000 or only cost us $6,000 to get it through its MOT. And you think, well, if you'd have been doing regular maintenance and doing a proper job, then it'd just be another inspection or pre-MOT inspection.
Yeah, that
might have cost you a couple of £100 to get it through its MOT. Why would you do that? Not only are you risking the driver, because as a user of the vehicle, it's not only as the operator, but it's a driver out in the vehicle
and the members of the public as well.
Yeah, indeed. But it's just it baffles me. Baffles me. But it's a case of just drawing up and providing them with the information, providing them with the evidence, and it's then down to them how they take it forward. And you come back and you're back the following week if depending on what the customer is, and you're going through. So right, what have you done? What have you done? Where are we up to with this? And let's have a look at that. And let's have a look at that. And if you get into a routine and you'll know the ones that are going to end up playing a game. I
was going to say, do you find you sort of self-filter? Like you got decades of experience of working with people. That we talked about bullshitters earlier. Do you kind of get like a spidey sense of like this is going to be a tough one? Because I say our background pre doing kind of software, we were compliance consultants specifically aimed at fours, so not legal compliance, not O license stuff, but like fours. But it's an extension of. So it assumes a certain amount of legal compliance. And with hindsight, I look back at our early customers. Some of them are still with us now. They're great. They're fantastic. They're easy to work with. They get how we operate. They listen to what we say. It's great. But then you kind of look back and they go, the ones that never really stuck around, the ones that, with hindsight, they were never going to stick around. The thing is, compliance isn't bloody complicated either. It's not. Hello, kitty cat.
No,
there you go.
I'm guessing the dog's left us then if the cats are here.
Yeah. It's not hard. It's like you sit down and like back in our early days, we would actually do face to face. Like we'd actually go in. This was pre-COVID, so people didn't really know how video calls worked. People didn't know how Zoom worked, that sort of stuff. So we'd go in and sit down with them and have a cup of tea, and they'd get all their stuff out. I'm like, but it doesn't need to be this complicated. And then they're sort of like bullshit and sort of say, oh, but this is how it's always been done. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not. Oh, yeah. And we go, oh, let's have a look at kind of like your maintenance schedules, because you need to have that for your own, for Fours. You need to prove you've got servicing done on time, because it sort of is a double check around, like, are you being legally compliant? It's like, oh, yeah, this is okay. They're over here. It's like, no, that's not, like, you're not. This doesn't add up. Like, you're not, like, it's not complicated. Why are you making this harder? And you kind of go with hindsight. Probably they were always going to be tough to work with. It's like the 20-80 rule, like 20% of your time is spent on 80% of your customers, but then 80% of your time is spent on the other 20%. You get your difficult customers and they take so much time and energy. Do you find that you filter those out and just don't work with them?
I give them a limited time to try and mend the way. Generally, you know, within about half an hour of sitting down and talking to somebody, possibly less with some, that you know whether they're gonna play ball.
I guess you've got decades of experience to pull upon on that sort of like non-verbal, nuanced sort of like behaviour. But for people that have only been doing it a few months, what sort of obvious red flags might you kind of pick up that you can sort of share with us? Is there anything quite obvious?
It's hard to put it into words, really, because you're looking for, but you're looking for them to, I suppose, listening to what you're saying, you know, and not distracting and sort of eyes going off and, you know, looking at the phone, looking at the computer, and not really. Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're obvious ones. Yeah. But not making notes, you know, not so you're doing it, and but I like people that when you, especially sort of key things, to say, listen, this is really important, you know, with regard to this, where you're up to on that. You know, how many, what's your weekly schedule on your O license? What you're currently doing, and you know, if they well, yeah, I don't know, but you know, I'll look into that. I'll double check it. You know, I like that. That's good. But if they're just saying, yeah, I'll look into that. I'll check that. And you know, and there's nothing there. Well, yeah. Back in the original, the old guy from me, you know, my early 20s, he probably would remember all these different points and remember everything and be able to recite it. But yeah, I'd just be looking for people to be willing and listening, and which is great. But if they don't, then you say, well, yeah, okay, you know, I'll do my action plan anyway. I'll provide the information. Or I might do an audit, you know, to start with, to do an audit, to present them with a list of specific actions, split them into advisories or recommendations, and then that's showing the priorities to, you know, make sure that the recommendations are done, you know, highlight them in red. So it depends on the customer really, and how they're going to do it, but yeah, just hope that people are at least listening to you.
Yeah, I find. I mean, it's something that it's not just with like talking about compliance. When you're talking generally, it's like I said before we hit record. Let's turn all notifications off, just because it's irritating in a recording. But like, what we're doing here is normal in my eyes meeting etiquette. Distractions are off. Yeah. Phones are off. Like my phone's doing service. It's in the room because if it rings, it's usually an emergency. We have to deal with it. These people are running businesses. They can't stop their business for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but I've got a notepad and a pen next to me. Even this, just so as you're talking, I'm like, well, that's a good idea. I might actually come back to that.
Yeah, I spotted that.
Yeah, I was like, it's a few questions. I was like, yeah, I want to talk to you about your mentor later. That was the thing I wrote down earlier. But yeah, like, I think it's just common decency. I think the other thing that I've noticed is those that when you say you're going to do something or you give someone an action plan, not necessarily whether they've done the actions or not, that is important, but it's whether they can have shown evidence they've tried to achieve them.
Yeah.
Or whether they've...
shown willing.
Yeah, they don't. I don't necessarily expect everything to be done, but it's like, it's when they stop answering the phone or stop replying to emails, and you go in and it's just excuse after excuse, and then the excuses contradict each other as well. That's the other thing. When they're obviously lying to you, that's when I think that's the line to me. It's just like, I'm not going to work with you. I mean, I'm not a TM. I'm not working on that same thing, but the same thing with customers generally. You know they're going to take more time than they're worth.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, I like to give everyone a benefit of the doubt, really, and work with with whoever needs to be worked with, and if I end up spending a bit more time, the more work that you put in at the beginning, as an ETM, they say, your expected hours, what you're looking at for, depending on the number of vehicles, and that's what your weekly hours is, as a minimum, as a broad brush. But in the early days, I put an awful lot more time in because you're laying the foundations. And that then, if you lay the foundations and you explain, say, is this going to cost me any more money? So, well, no, because what this does
makes my life easier.
It makes my life easier, longer term, but also it's training you into the art. So we'll get all these systems in place. And all you need to do is just keep on top of it.
Do you find that sometimes that bites you in the arse because you put all that work in and they say, thank you very much, see you later, or go for someone cheaper or whatever?
It can do. It can do. It's incredibly narrow-minded of some, but, at the end of the day, they're in business, and if they can't afford it, I've done a couple over the years that have set up. Not many really have then decided that they've sort of thought, well, we'll go for somebody cheaper. We've got all these systems. It's very underhanded, that really. And I think it's incredibly annoying. But when they've used, say, internal succession, so they've trained somebody else up, and they've got an internal guy that's gone in through done a CPC, and that's happened a few times. You can understand that. Yeah, you can understand that, because then they're moving from an external and they're moving then to an internal. And I'd comfortably do a handover period to hand the details across to them, and and to a certain extent you're taking, you're talking yourself out of business, but it's the right thing to do, and you've put the time in. You've sorted out all these, you take pride in your work. If you don't take pride in your work, what's the point of doing it? Yeah.
Obviously, I think it'll say it.
Cat's taking up residence.
There you go. That's fine. I guess this also means that you, as an ETM, can move on to passes new, work with other customers and stuff. I think it's easy to get stagnant and get bored doing what you do. Like, genuinely in life, it's like, it's not. You genuinely go become your own boss and do your own thing because you want that kind of balance of things. You don't want to be doing the same shit each day. You want to mix it up. And I know I was talking to Sammy Bowler on the podcast last year, and she's actually been an ETM now coming up for a year, but she says she loves working with like difficult, either willingly difficult or just like non-compliant businesses, getting them to the point when they are compliant, and then actively going, look, I've done my job, let's move on. You don't need to necessarily pay me quite as much as you pay me, because I'm not going to be, you go and find someone cheaper and do it. And then, and she actually brought it up. It was not on the podcast. I was talking to her a few weeks ago. She was like, it would be really great if I could pass it on to a less experienced TM that I could then sort of mentor and keep an eye on, because then the customer's getting a cheaper experience, but you're also giving valuable experience to new TMs, which is such a big gap, I think, at the moment. I think people... It is.
And if people get that opportunity, again, if you get an opportunity to hand over the reins to like using an internal manager that's moved into the position, and then there's always a potential to say, well, you can negotiate just compliance only. Yeah. So you can do a handover period, but you could then say, well, I'll give you online or a 7-day online and phone support for X amount of time, or an endless time, and depending on the size of the operation, you can potentially just say a couple of £100, and I'm there if you need me. I'll charge you a day rate, or I'll come in and do periodic audits or whatever. And so it's not always just line in the sand. You've lost the customer. Then you could be, again, if you've done a really good job and you've created the relationships, then it does give you. But also word of mouth. That's the best form of advertising. Yeah. So all these different people that you've worked with, that you've sorted stuff out, they're in different circles of whether it be professional or otherwise. talking to, I know a guy that we've used. I'll pass you his number. He might be able to sort you out or give you some guidance or do an audit for you. I mean, sometimes I do. I have, I've had the odd notification that's come in from somebody that's had if they've been instructed by the traffic commission or that they've got to have an external audit that's done. So you're pulling a report together and pass it across. They've then got to feed it back and such. And it's a bit frustrating at times that people leave it to that point.
Yeah,
rather than doing something about it beforehand, really, to avoid it.
Yeah.
But it happens. But again, sometimes by doing that, you can get other spin-off businesses, and you can point it out and say, well, yeah, I can help you with that if you so wish. The choice is yours. So.
It's one thing I've noticed. I kind of did a bit of a push a few weeks ago looking for podcast guests. I was like, I need to find interesting people to talk to who've actually got real life experience in transport and logistics, specifically within transport management, because we've just launched this new product for transport managers. So I was like, let's talk to them and kind of get their views on life and stuff. And then you start talking to people and you kind of don't necessarily name drop, but you kind of mention, I was actually on the phone to him yesterday. And it's like suddenly you realize that actually word of mouth and networking is so important.
It's massive. It is massive. The community that you start building around you, I think, is really important. And it's kind of, it's easier the older is the wrong word, more experience. I don't mean that kind of distinguish. It's just like you've been around the block, you naturally build up a network of people you interact with. Other businesses, as you say, you get recommended, you go and do an audit, then that person recommends you do this, and then when you're on site, they've got the mechanic on site, you're talking to him. Like you build up just through time a network. But yeah, you do, but you don't have to be old to do that. You can, you can have you can kick it off at 20, 21, pass your exams, and you're going in and hopefully get a good chance to be able to be mentored and work with some experienced people. One thing I would say with regard to that, I've come across people that are allegedly experienced and they've been around for a long time. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing everything right.
No.
So yeah, the new guys coming into the industry, then remember what the book says. Remember all these different things and the correct information. And if you spot something then while they're going along and they're telling you how to do it, this is because we've always done it like this. It's perfectly fine.
I think
then challenge them and say, well, actually, I'm sure the book says that this bit's required, and that's and challenging them in a friendly sort of. I'm sure
I think you see it on Facebook groups specifically. I think we're probably talking about the same sort of thing. It's like there's people that generally the ones with the loudest voice are the ones that get heard the most, and doesn't necessarily mean they're the right voice to be listening to. Not all the time, and I'm not going to kind of point any fingers and name any names. I think it's unfair because there are a lot of people there trying to do their best, but are also not very good at listening to feedback themselves. And I find I think every day should be a school day. I think you should be open to.
You're always learning, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're always learning. But some of those groups where people will ask, a question, and to some it might seem obvious, but not to everyone. No. And some of the comments are the way they're downright rude.
Yeah.
And there's no need for that.
No.
I mean, I've always been happy with somebody, and I don't get involved with too many of those groups. I might just sort of reiterate something that somebody else has said, to confirm, but I'll keep it just to a short little bit of evidence rather than putting a link into something else or whatever. Just a couple of little one-liners or a few little bullet points. But yeah, I'm more than comfortable people send us the odd message to say, what's your thoughts of it? And well, as I said, people from 15, 20 years ago, and then people that are just giving us a ring up, and they'll just have a little catch up and a little shoot the breeze and say, while you're on, and then you get to the reason why they've actually called you in the first place. But yeah, I'm comfortable. Or, send the odd email. I mean, I don't want 200 emails that's suddenly coming in.
I'm not going to put your email address in the.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Although I did I was doing obviously my due diligence researching you. I found your website and you got your emails on your website. So
I know. Yeah, that's right.
I must say it's
all buggered now, isn't it? Really.
Again, yeah, you're a bit inundated. Yeah, no. I think it's one of the reasons why we decided we wanted to launch this new product. And I'm going to sort of spend a couple minutes explaining, because I don't know how much you know about the Transport Managers Collective. I think we've spoken about it briefly last time we spoke.
Very briefly, yeah. No, but yeah, obviously there'll be a lot of people out there that have got no idea.
Yeah, and it's more, we saw there's a couple of things. First of all, there's a gap in the market for those that have just qualified. Because the reason I wanted kind of experienced people to come on is like, we talk about like, how do you get that feel, those red flags for a new operator that's going to be difficult to work with? How do you not get bullied by them? You don't learn that shit on the course.
No, of course you don't.
You don't learn how to set your rates on the course. You don't learn to kind of actually the emotional relationship you've got to build with your operators and customers and drivers to get them on board. None of that shit gets taught. You need to learn that on the fly. And so we were like, well, there's a gap there for new TMs, but also I think kind of you highlighted the point is you can still learn as well. Like you've been doing this many years, and actually there's sometimes that you might not have as much experience in a different sector as you get an operator. Like you've got plenty of experience in waste, but have you got much experience in construction and tippers and mixers? Like there's a very specific type of operator. Like I've not done that for a long time. Actually, I do need some help. Yeah. And so we built the TMC in a way that so it's got a forum on there, so you can go and ask questions. We've got resources on there. We do training. One thing we are launching, which I think you'd be really interested in, is we're launching some networking events. So they're online networking, where you can actually go in with small groups, 5-10 people, where you can just go and hang out and just talk. And we're trying to get a blend of experienced and new TMs to kind of just talk about what they're struggling with at the moment. It's not recorded. It's not going to go beyond the group of people. If you want to bitch about someone and get some insight on how to deal with it,
doesn't go on, does it?
Of course not. No, never. But just a place where it's trying to foster an environment of positivity, so that you can ask those stupid questions, because A, they're not stupid questions, but B, you should be able to ask them, because if you've asked it, chances are someone else wants to know as well.
Yeah.
Actually, and getting the right.
Back to your school days, that you sat there thinking, oh, there's a question here, but I don't want to look an idiot.
Yeah.
And and there's probably another 10 people that were thinking exactly the same question.
Yeah.
It doesn't change.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. It's just a different environment.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, and kind of the question I wanted to come back to, which I'm going to ask you on air, and I'm going to put you on the spot now. You say your mentor kind of was quite significant and instrumental in kind of how you kind of you approach your career, and you sort of still think back to him. Do you feel there is enough people out there now being mentors to new TMs and new transport professionals, or do you think that's sort of been lost through generationally?
I think there's a significant shortfall, because I think people, as time have gone by, I think people have probably become a little bit more selfish, perhaps. And they're only in it for the money, or they're only in it for the time. That's it. Well, I'm paid for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is, and that's all I'm gonna do. I don't want to part my experience or my information with you too much, because then you can go and do it yourself, or as you said before, you'll go off and I can get somebody cheaper because all my systems are set up in place. So they'll hold information back, and as soon as you start holding information back, then you're not telling them the full story, so they're not learning everything they could possibly learn. So yeah, I think it would be the more sort of networking ideas that are out there, then the better. But as long as the genuine, there are still genuine people out that. Yeah, obviously everyone's got to earn a coin and such, but yeah, I'd be more than comfortable with spending time with people. And the problem is sometimes, depending on what if you're with an external or even as an internal transport manager, not all customers would want somebody else coming in, to sort of kind of this guy's with me or this girl's with us today, to do a little bit of job shadowing to understand. And they wouldn't, they wouldn't be happy with that. So it's difficult. It is difficult. But if they get an opportunity to spend some time with, within their industry, within the company, you can go to, if they pass your CPC, go to another depot.
Yeah.
That's, if there's a number of different, go to another depot, go and spend a week with somebody in another depot that does the role and that looks after the compliance. Or there should be, if depending on, again, the size of, if there's a regional compliance guy or something other, then go and get some mentor on for it, because they should be absolutely spot on if they're doing it right across the board for a decent size.
They should also want to support you because you're doing it within the organisation, so it's part of their job. Well, yeah, so they're getting paid for it, but at the end of the day, providing they're not, and typically if you can find somebody that's a little bit longer in the tooth, they're not going to be thinking, oh, they're going to nick me job, because ultimately they may only have 5, 10, 15 years that they want to carry on working. So, they might be thinking, well, actually, they can have me job, and I'll teach them to help me while I'm on my exit strategy lecture. Yeah. So the more people that are prepared to do that. I think it's important. I think there's not enough of them around, or they haven't got the time, and I think that's something that's quite important to not lose in all walks of life.
Yeah,
I think that's
and it's hard because obviously time is a massive factor for someone. Yeah, depending on the job roles that you're doing, because people are wanting blood nowadays, are wanting more and more from you. Yeah. So your time to be able to spend to mentor or train or teach, however you want to call it, it does get minimised. So,
how do you balance your time then? 'Cause obviously, are you full now? Are you at 4 operators?
Yes, I'm on 4 operators, and I do a little bit of compliance. What I want to try and do is, because there's one that's going to be serving notice shortly. So they've moved to or they will be moving to an internal. So I will do, as we were discussing before, I'll do exactly the same. I do that with any of them. I'll do a handover period and such. But it also then gives you some time back to then. I mean, I've been starting to think about doing some more marketing, and but if I can get a balance back and just do more compliance rather than the external. Might just go for small little customers on the external point, and concentrate more just on compliance visits or compliance audits. So there's a lot more flexibility with that. But
you're not so rigid to sort of like, these are the days and times I've got to go to this operator sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And flexibility for me is massive nowadays. That's why I've made some of the changes that I've made. Because it's becoming more and more. I've got a couple of little grandkids now, so I don't want to be. I mean, I've done all the ambitions and chased the money and done all that kind of stuff over the years, with 1 or 2 regrets to a certain extent. But you do what you do. Not big regrets. I wouldn't say that I'd never do it again, or I shouldn't have done that. But I'd done it. You've got to make more time.
You've got to make decisions with imperfect data at the time. Like it's always the best decision at the time for what you got in front of you.
And that's it. And you stand by that. You do stand by that. But if I could have spent a bit more time with the kids when they were growing up, rather than chasing the money or chasing the jobs or working away and such, then perhaps that's what I could have done. But I didn't. But hey, such is life.
Yes. And you got to say 2 beautiful grandkids. So I mean, it's not all bad.
They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And the good thing is, at the end of the day, unless they're having a sleepover, they get picked up and off they go. Yeah. So way back in my early career, when I left uni, I did childminding for 2 years. I used to work with my now mother-in-law, and we used to look after a household of kids, and it was great. Everyone's like, how do you do it? I was like, I get to give them back at the end of the day. I still get to go to the pub and not have to pay for a babysitter. It's brilliant. And now I've got a child, I'm like, I know what it feels like. It's all over. It's all over.
No. I wouldn't change her for the world, but sometimes it's like, we're recording this. It's the end of February. I don't know when this is going to go out, but end of February we're recording this. My parents have been away for 2 months, and they normally do a lot of my wraparound care for my little one. And so like I have to be out of the office by 2:30 Monday to Thursday to go and pick up my little one from preschool, and then I've got her. And it's beautiful. I mean, what I'm planning this afternoon, we're coming back. We're going to do the volcano science experiment with the bicarb soda and the vinegar. I'm loving doing that, but it is really hard to balance that and running a startup as well. So there's always regret.
It is tough. It is tough, and so, if you could get and it's finding that balance. I mean, I'm 55 this year, and I've only just started to get that balance really that I would have loved 20 years ago. But
I think the world of work has changed as well. I think it's more socially acceptable now to have more than one career in your working life. Like I'm going to be working for about 75 years, it seems. The retirement age is going to keep going. Like you are. It's like my parents' generation. My dad was a teacher. My mum was a nurse. That was when they entered the workforce. That's when they left the workforce. My dad taught at the same school. My mum, I think, was 3 or 4 hospitals she worked through in her career. Like, it's just what you did. You had one career, one job role. That was what you expected to do. Now, you don't. You might have 2 or 3 careers, and also you might have side hustles. And it's so much more acceptable to be freelance, self-employed, doing multiple things, having choice. Yeah. So I think I'm really lucky. And also technology has moved on. Like the fact that we're able to do this podcast remotely, you're sitting in your kind of spare room with your elephant wallpaper, which I had to get into the podcast somehow.
Sewing room. Yeah,
sewing room. There you go. I'm sitting in my home to record this. Like you can do this. I can leave now and go and pick my little one up, have 3 hours, beautiful time with her. We can switch. Me and my wife can switch. I can then go back to the office, and we work somewhat asynchronously. My team do stuff. I can review. I can do my bits in the evenings and the weekends, and it doesn't really affect the balance. 20 years ago, you couldn't do that. It was a very different environment to work in. So I think we're able to be more balanced with lots of other things.
It's definitely helped. Definitely helped.
So I think that's probably that's sort of summing up mostly. I've realised, looked at the time, I do actually have to leave to go and pick up my little one. So I'm going to have to kind of wrap this up. But I think there's one last question I had. Is there one piece of advice that you would have given your former self when you started your transport management kind of journey?
I would probably say trust your gut. If you are going for whether it be a job interview or you're looking at a new client and you get a feel that something's just not right or they're just not right, the chances are it probably isn't. And that's I've had a few experiences of that really. I guess that you think I should have walked away probably from that client or that customer, but again, with me being old fashioned, I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. But if you're going to take on a full-time job and the guy that's interviewing you, you think, he's a bit of a cockhead, the chances are he probably is. Yeah. He probably is. And you're going to have to, and I've always asked the questions, who is it that I'm working to? Am I working for you? Am I working for somebody else? And it's important to like the person that you're reporting into. And that's massive. That's massive because you're a long time working. So it's important to ideally like the person that you're working for, but also know that they've got your back and support, and they're gonna listen to you. If it doesn't feel right, then just walk away.
I think it's having the strength to walk away.
Yeah. Well, also, and again, depending on the financial situation, you haven't always got that facility. Yeah. But if you have to take it, then take it with the knowledge of we'll give it a go, but. Keep your eye over the shoulder and see what else is there.
100%.
But I suppose also, if you are in positions and such, and not everyone, but do as many courses as you can possibly do, because I've done, good grief, especially in the early years, I've done as many courses as I could possibly do. And somebody said to us at one day, most of them are just but most of the courses, you can spend a day or half a day, and it's all just nonsense, really. But you don't know that until you do. But if you can come away with one snippet of information, you think, yeah, I like that. I'll
the
use
other
that.
benefit of those courses are you get to meet a load of other people as well.
Networking, yeah.
So it comes up to that. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Frank. For
you'll have to leg it in a minute, won't you?
I am. Yeah, I've literally I've got to pack up and get out to the nursery. So thank you very much, Frank, for joining me on the pod. It's been
nice to catch up again, Alan.
Yes, no, definitely, and we should definitely kind of keep in touch for sure.
Yes, definitely.
And we'll talk.
Send us a link to when you've got the stuff that you're setting up. Send us a link.
Yeah, no, I mean it's all set up. It's all there. People can go and check it out now. It's all tmcollective.co.uk. There's a free trial at the moment. Use the code free trial. That's more for listeners than your benefit. I'll send it to you separately. But I thought I'd get it in there. You gave me a chance to give me the plug, so I'm going to take it. But yeah, I mean, we're building it just to help people. Ultimately, I want to help people. That's the goal. So, I'll send you a link. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. And, thank you to my listeners for tuning in to another one of these. My listeners, you lot are what mean I can keep wanging on to people. So please do keep listening. Other than that, thank you very much, Frank, for joining me, and I'll speak to you next time.
Cheers now. Ta-da.
A big thank you to Frank for joining me this week, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Morning Cuppa Podcast. If you like this week's episode, be sure to go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. That will help us get in front of even more transport professionals just like you. As always, I love chatting to other transport professionals, so go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, using the links that will be down below or something. That's all from me. Once again, thanks for listening to the show. I've been Alan, and this has been the Morning Cuppa Podcast.